Welcome to Assertive Communication Skills, People Skills Training. I'm Trainer Lori. What is being assertive? Well, it's saying what you mean without stepping on the rights of others. Have you ever said something that you didn't mean? For example, have you ever stood at the altar saying in your head, no, 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 and actually out loud saying, I do? That's pretty bad, isn't it? Well, I actually did that. And we need to be able to say what we want at the right time. Otherwise, we can get into a lot of trouble. There's really three kinds of communication styles. Those who beat around the bush, we call them passive. People who are verbal attackers, we call them aggressive. And people who are good with straight talk, they say what they mean. This is what we want to be. We want to have rights without violating the rights of others. Well, let's look at these three different styles. Well, typically it's written as a continuum, like we just saw. I like to think of it as a circle because a passive and aggressive are very similar to each other. When you get tired of being passive, you tend, at least I certainly did, tend to lash out and be aggressive. And assertive was an entirely different subject that I'd never seen before. I didn't even know how to do it. Somewhere in between passive and aggressive is something also called passive-aggressive. That means I'll be passive to your face, but aggressive behind your back. And any of those is not appropriate because you either get stepped on or you step on other people. And our goal today is to learn to communicate and say how we feel and how we think without stepping on the rights of others. It comes in two parts. I have rights, and so do you. Therefore, we're going to learn two ways to be assertive. Two steps to it. The first is the I statement, followed by the question. This can be on the continuum, the passive to aggressive side, depending on what you're normally, but it works in just about any situation. For example, you have the right to say something about yourself. I don't think that's correct. And then you follow it with a question because you're giving them the ability to speak their mind too. Can we check the details? See, that's a little more on the passive side. I don't think that's correct. Can we check the details? Very appropriate to say without being too passive, but it is still on the passive side of assertive. Here's another one. I don't agree. When are you going to fix it? Again, it is an I statement. That means it starts with the I, because you can say anything you want about your own feelings, and then a question about what the other person's going to do. This is a little more on the aggressive side, but it is still assertive. Both of these are assertive statements. So based on your own communication style, it's easy to use this simple skill of using the I statement followed by the question. Here's another way to explain it. The I statement is what I need, what I want, I prefer, I expect, and sometimes if you have to, you can weasel out of it a little bit by saying we need this. But it's okay to stand up for yourself and to say, I need something. And then the question should be regarding their behavior, the facts, a solution, something like that. So you don't want it to be in their face, but you want it, when is this going to end? When can we check the facts? Can we work on a solution? A question like that. Now, their questions should be open-ended, and don't use why. Of all the questions that you ask, you don't want to use why because why makes people want to defend their position. So any other question, what, how, whose, what exactly do you think is wrong with it? How would you do it? Who can help? Where is this going? Whose project is this? When can I expect an answer? Those are open-ended questions. That means that they don't expect a yes-no answer. And we don't use the why question. That's the one question people will feel like they have to justify, and then they might just dig in their heels instead of work with you toward a solution. Our goal is to come to a workable compromise, to non-manipulatively negotiate the difference between the two. You're going to have differences with people. That's okay. In fact, somebody famous said, if we both agree, what do we need you for? And it's true. You're going to disagree, but the goal is to try to work together. If nothing else, come up with a working agreement, find a solution to the differences. How can you work out the differences? So it's not to make them see your way, your point of view only. It's to be able to communicate better. I'm going to show you 6 assertiveness skills right now, some great tips and things to use when you have a little time to think. Now, you probably aren't going to be able to use all these in every situation, but pick the one that will solve a solution. If you have an issue right now with somebody and you don't know how to talk to them, pick the right one of these. And these are all good uses in certain situations. So let's look at the situations and how to use it. The first one is called negative inquiry. Essentially, you're asking, why would you feel that way about me? Because if you don't bother asking, sometimes people really don't like you. Maybe there's something else going on that you didn't remember doing. For example, maybe you hurt them somehow. In a meeting, I used to do this a lot before I started thinking about what I'd say. I'd say, well, that's stupid. Oops. Now they look bad in front of other people, and I didn't even realize I'd said it, and of course they're going to be hurt, and they may come back and try to get me some other way. So sometimes you just need to ask, is there something about me you don't like? Did I do something that offended you? Negative inquiry. Limit setting. Sometimes you simply have to say no. When they say, well, I want you to do this and this and this, and you have to fix all these problems. Now, if this isn't the boss talking to you, this is just somebody who's trying to take over in your life, it's okay to say no. You can say, well, this part's okay, I'll rework the problem area. I don't need to redo the whole thing. Be sure that you don't feel like you have to give excuses here. Nobody cares about excuses, reasons why you can't do it. Simply say, no, this is what I will do. Negative assertion is one of my favorites. If somebody, for example, let's say you enter a meeting a few minutes late. Now maybe you were putting out a fire. There was some important reason for you to be late, but you really don't need to explain it to the people in the room. Now, of course, it's always different if it's your boss, but if somebody in there is a sniper and says something like, well, it's about time you showed up, or you're late, you simply agree. Yes, I am late. Yes, it is late. Yes. And then you quickly move on to, and where were we? Or maybe even apologize for being late. Yes, I am late. I apologize. Where are we? And keep moving. What you don't want to do is deny it because it's pretty obvious. If you can see the problem, if everybody can see the problem, don't deny it. That only makes it worse. Fogging is one of my favorites. I had a woman in class once that said that this was going to save her family life. Her brother-in-law had lost his job and moved in with them. He'd lost his house too. And he was reading the paper all day looking for jobs, but also reading stories. And when he'd come home, when she came home from work, all he wanted to do was tell her his opinion of some news story. Now, it really didn't matter what his opinion was to her, but it got under her skin for some reason, and she wanted to argue with him about it. She forgot that this is all that this poor man had at this time. He had lost his job, had lost his house. All he had was his opinion. So when someone gives you their opinion and it really doesn't matter, there is no reason to get into a fight with them over it. This is when we use fogging. That's when you respond with something, but they don't really know how you feel about it because it doesn't matter anyway. This is one of my favorites to use with a know-it-all. Well, there's a thought. What do you know? Well, that's interesting. Just a simple phrase like that, and that response, it gives them what they want, some sort of response, without showing your cards. You don't have to say how you really feel if it doesn't really matter. Broken record. Have you ever worked with a salesman who promised you something and didn't deliver? Broken record's a great tool to use with that. You said you'd meet the deadline. Well, I didn't know that there'd be this and this and this problem. I know, but you said you'd meet the deadline. In other words, you stick to the topic at hand, remembering that your goal is resolution, not to beat them down. So you stick to the topic until they say, well, this is what I'm going to do about it. Or you say, what can you do about it? You said you're going to make the deadline. You didn't. What are you going to do about it? And that gets the monkey off your back onto them because they're the ones that messed up. This is one of my favorites, especially in a customer service environment, when you have to try to change somebody else's mind. And it could be in a staff meeting too, when you're working with a coworker, and they simply don't see your point of view. And so this is a great way to help explain it or sell it. I know exactly how you feel. I felt the same way. Then I found out, and then you explain your reasons for changing your mind. That way, it's showing empathy that I understand how you're feeling, and also giving them knowledge on why you don't feel that way anymore, instead of saying, well, that's stupid. That's all. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.